right. Welcome everybody to another session with the Investment Dominator. In today's session, we are going to go ahead and walk through some of the more advanced topics involved with the Investment Dominator, specifically around using some of the more advanced features or just more technical features. And what's great about this session is that no matter what kind of skill level you are, you definitely will come out of this learning something new. So we'll go ahead and introduce our Thursday call. We'll go ahead and get started. And just to kind of remind everybody about this call as well, if you did leave a question on our last Monday call this week, then we will go ahead and answer those first before we go ahead and break down any new questions that we would have today. So with that being said, my name is Dominic and I work as IT support for the Investment Dominator, and I'll be going ahead and taking care of today's session for today. What you're going to see now is just some instructions. Number one, on how you can go ahead and join the stream. So you'll see right here, please join. As soon as you join the session with Ring Central, just go ahead and make sure that your computer audio is enabled to be connected, as well as if there is another speaker which you are listening to, you'll go ahead and change that if such, but please join with the computer audio. This is by default. And also, there is another way for you to go ahead and submit a question at any time during the stream. You can actually go ahead and click on the Q&A button. And now the Q&A button works differently as it did on GoToWebinar. And with this, what you'll basically do is click it, submit your question, and when you go ahead and submit your question, I can go ahead and mark it as answered once I'm done, and then it'll go ahead and be dismissed afterwards. But you'll notice that this is treated differently than just the chat section that you'll see there for Ring Central. So just keep this in mind, because if you're trying to directly send a question in, I definitely want you to go ahead and click on that Q&A button, but any general comments or anything you would just want to shout out or just say, go ahead and remain that in just the chat section. And you also don't really have to worry about raising your hand, as the Q&A feature will go ahead and prompt me as soon as you go ahead and submit a question. So with that being said, what you're going to see here is that all the calls will be recorded and posted onto the user guide once we're done. And yeah, so that's how we'll cover this section. And as always, when we're working with the Investment Dominator, you do want to keep in mind that these LPG deal flow will be transparent through everything involved with the Investment Dominator. So for instance, this is really just a step-by-step guide and a high-level overview of what entails with the Investment Dominator and really what you're coming into. So for example, you'll go ahead and first select a target market, and then from that target market, you can go ahead and get a list of landowners, which you can go ahead and filter, and there are numerous of the different ways that you can go ahead and work through with this, and we'll talk about some of those a little bit later. Next, you'll go ahead and mail your letters, as well as talk to sellers and do your preliminary research. So on top of that, once you're done doing your research, then next you'll go ahead and make up your offers and mail those out. So then you'll mail your offers and option agreements. And then what you'll see here is open escrow and do some detailed research. And then the last two steps that we have here are really the end goals for working with the LPG deal flow, being able to, number one, market the property with or without owner financing, and being able to sell the property and get paid. So really, that is the end result of what we are trying to do. And, we really hope that these sessions are kind of guiding you and building you to that. As always, we are open and available to questions, just like this session that we're on today. So for example, on this slide, you'll see on the left-hand side that basically all of this information is coming from you, and it's being input into the Investment Dominator. Now, this is the great thing about the Investment Dominator and why it's such a powerful tool. You can take information such as your company information, your county data information, offer requests, whether that be through by phone or by website, property details, tasks. All of this information is coming from you again, and you're putting it into the Investment Dominator. What you're able to do Afterwards is you're able to then go ahead and generate your letters, then go ahead and generate offers, as well as your websites, calculators and tools, as well as analytics and team management. So there's really a lot going on here, and we definitely, embrace just any questions that you guys would have regarding this. But also, in regards to kind of getting some feedback and understanding everybody's needs, what we will say is that at the end of the stream, you'll go ahead and be prompted with a Investment Dominator survey. And we definitely recommend that you go ahead and submit this survey if you do have time, and this is really just going to help us understand where you're coming from, but also what kind of changes that might need to take place for the Investment Dominator. Again, we're never shy from feedback, and we really want to get a holistic view of how we can make the Investment Dominator great for everybody. So don't be shy. Go ahead and, it'll just ask you for your name as well as your email address associated with your account, and then just going ahead and answering some questions. If you do have time, go ahead and do that. But what we're going to do now is actually go ahead and bring up, let's see if we can get this real quick. All right, so what we're going to go ahead and do. All right, there we go. So what we're going to go ahead and do is actually break down some of the questions that we've had recently, whether that be through our past Monday session or even our past Thursday session that we had previously. And we're going to answer our backlog questions first, then we're going to go ahead and be able to answer any questions that we would have today. Also, since we're getting, since the introduction of this new software, RingCentral webinar, and just kind of getting introduced to it, we have noticed that there are some people that are still kind of working through with it and understanding it. So also during this session, we're going to try to create some YouTube videos out of some content that we're going to be doing for just the live streams. And this will just really just help the user guide and really impacting how you're getting the information. We understand that some people are visual and some people just like to go ahead and just, read something and then they understand it. And we want to try to accommodate everybody's needs. So with that being said, we do have a question from last week. And the question really falls along the line of what is the difference between using the local printer option or the other option for generating documents? And we definitely want to go ahead and just kind of break this down for you, especially when you start working with these documents, to be able to go ahead and make sure that you are getting the right things for your needs, as well as any other mail houses. Let's say if you're sending to ITI direct mail, they'll go ahead and ask for the 2 PDFs as well as a CSV file. So we can also walk through on how we can go ahead and do that. Now, with that being said, first thing that you want to go ahead and do, go ahead over here to the land section. If you did not notice, before we go into this as well, we do have a new update regarding these drop-down menus, and we did talk about this on the past calls, so I won't spend too much time on this. But again, I would like to highlight the fact that this is really helpful just in terms of being able to pinpoint the details that you need for the Investment Dominator as fast and efficient as possible. Again, feedback or anything, go ahead and just make sure to go ahead and submit that that survey at the end of the stream. Now, with that being said, hovering over land and going to dashboard, we're going to go ahead and see all of the records that I have within my account right now, and the highlighted ones as well too. So what we're going to number one focus on is going ahead and generating a campaign, because really that's what we're doing to be able to go ahead and use these documents. Now let's go ahead here to campaigns. And what you're going to see, number one, is this whole section, and this is really called the campaign sections, but you'll see this title here just to be able to generate your land documents. Now, just kind of getting a high-level overview before we dive into this, you're going to see these sections down below, and it's going to tell you either, what kind of letters you're looking to generate, as well as what you're going to move on to next. So for example, if you click on letters to owners, the first thing that you're going to notice is that you're able to go ahead and see, number one, how many owners or how many letters and how many owners are there, as well as the fact of this being the prospect neutral letter. And if a lot of this is new to you, one thing that I would recommend is being able to actually use the user guide, which we'll go over in just a bit, to not only understand the information with about the Investment Dominator, but also just having a reference as well too. One things that we do mention on the Monday calls as well is any helpful tips. So for example, within the brackets, you'll see a question mark. Now within this, you'll hover over this and you'll see a tip that we have for the prospect neutral letter. So for example, this tip says, this number may be smaller than the amount of properties you import into the system because only one neutral letter is generated per owner, even if the owner owns multiple properties. So for example, that's something that we'll see here within this number difference here as compared to just our skip trace, which will go ahead and just send out 5 letters. So now going back to what the local printer as well as the other option will go ahead and do for us. If you go ahead and hover over generate documents and you click right on it, you're going to see 4 options that you'll do for your prospect neutral letter. Now just keep in mind, one thing that we are working on is adding this REI print mail option to these other campaigns that we're working through. So you're only going to see the REI print mail option available for the prospect neutral letter. But you'll see this exactly the same throughout the rest of these fields as well too, just without the REI print mail. Now, with that being said, we do have we have, like we said, 4 options here. So let's go ahead and walk through local printer and other, and then we'll come back to any other ones that we're working through. So for example, let's go ahead and click on local printer. Now, one thing that you will note is that the local printer option does give you the pre-formatted PDF options that you can go ahead and use to send off, for example, let's say to a mail house, or really if you just wanted your information as clean and concise as possible, definitely review it through the PDF option. Now, when we're talking about the doc option, this is also going to be only part of the other option, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But really, the doc format's used so that you can change the documents at any time. And I'll go ahead and show you an example of this now. So if we download a letter real quick of some of the documents that we're working with on our prospect neutral letter, we'll wait a second for this to open up. You're going to see that, number one, whenever you open up a doc format, you want to make sure that you go ahead and hit enable editing so that you have the correct view of the item. Now, if you scroll down, you're going to see, number one, that you can change any of this information to how you see fit. And for example, we'll see this there. So if you wanted to go ahead and, let's say, add some additional spacing, maybe you wanted to add a tab there, or something along those lines, if you wanted to make any changes, this is what you would do after you've already generated your documents. And always just make sure that when you're done, just go ahead and save it. And you can actually save this as a PDF document once you're done, which is what we see a lot when users are working with ITI. So now, with that being said, that's really the breakdown for this. So with all of that, if we come back here to generate documents and then we click onto other, which we'll see here, the other tab will now just prevent us with the doc formats, and as well as you'll see a CSV down here below. Now, one thing I do want to verify is okay, so the CSV option was not available like you saw for the last one, but if you go over here to other, then that is what will pop up there. So for example, you now have your CSV of your mailing list, and as well as your letter templates for your documents, as well as envelope templates for your documents as well. Now, this is a good route if you're going ahead and you're sending to ITI mailing, for example, specifically because you are getting your documents here, which need to be converted to a PDF. But also, you do need to provide a CSV file to the mail house to ensure that everything is correct. So for example, those are the two options between local printer as well as other. Now there is two more options here. Again, we'll talk through, we have one ITI Direct templates. So rather than instead of having to go through the manual route, let's say if you have all of your files already ready and they're good in the PDF format, you don't need to first start out with Word and then convert them afterwards. So what you'll go ahead and do for your prospect neutral letters, again, you'll see up here ITI Direct templates, and this is actually all that you need for ITI to go ahead and send. Again, that's the two PDFs that we're working with, one for the neutral letter templates as well as the envelope templates, and then last but not least the CSV file template here. So now with all of that being said, once you do have all of these documents here and in front of you, you do have another option. Rather than just downloading everything together, you can download a zip folder. Now, one thing that I will say is that if you are not technical, there is a little bit of a there's a little bit of a focus point that you should really know when working with these. And for example, you don't want to just send to ITI this exact zip folder. I'm not exactly sure if they accept that format, but really whenever you're working with a zip file, you want to go ahead and actually just take all the data here and just move it to another document. In other words, it's also called, let's see if I can pull it up here. Probably not. It's also called extracting. So for example, if I highlight everything and then you see this extract to, we can extract this to any file that we have on our system. And also just to highlight, this is on a Windows computer. So if you're on a Mac, this may be a little bit different. But that's really what you would go ahead and do. So that'll go ahead and answer our first question that we had from our backlog. And now we're going to go ahead and see if we have anything else that we can work with. So, for example, next thing that we're going to go ahead and focus on is number one, how to set up forwarding for your domains. So, for example, let's go ahead and close this out and let's go back to the dashboard. Now, when we're figuring out this forwarding for our domains, really what we want to go ahead and work through with is our user guide. And if we go ahead here to the help section and we go to user guide, just like such. So again, hovering over help, going right to user guide, we'll see it highlighted here. We'll click on that. All right, now we are opened up to the user guide. And actually, right after we go over this forwarding, let's go ahead and just talk briefly about how you can go ahead and use the user guide as an efficient resource. So now we're going to want to go ahead and type in domain, just like we do on our Monday calls. So I'll do that. And again, if you're, depending on what your domain provider is, whether, that be GoDaddy or Google Domains or REI Blackbook, anything of that sort, just keep in mind that you'll want to go ahead and make sure that you have these settings appropriately changed. And we're going to scroll down here to our domain article. Since we're not primarily focusing on the whole domain process, we could actually just focus on this forwarding section. So for example, we'll scroll down to item number 9. Now item number 9 goes ahead and tells us, I should say, right where we can go ahead and start to focus on the forwarding section. So this is also, it's best to have everything already set up, especially when working with your domain before you get to your forwarding. So make sure that if you haven't had that set up, that you actually do that first. And you'll see here, if I go to my forwarding settings, you're basically just going to want to copy exactly like what I have now. But I'll go ahead and walk through the steps anyway. So for example, when you're working with the forwarding for your domain, the first option that you have here is forward to. And forward to will list as HTTP, semicolon with the slashes there. And you want to make sure that you go ahead and select this option. If you select the HTTPS option, if provided by your domain provider, one thing that you're going to notice is that you're going to have some connection issues when working with the Investment Dominator. Now, this is to come because The Investment Dominator does provide you with the two securities for your website. So for example, your buying site as well as your selling site, we'll go ahead and have those listed securities. So you will not need to go ahead and forward to that HTTPS. Instead, you'll just forward to the HTTP and then go ahead and provide your full domain name. So for example, you'll do the www dot, and my domain starts here, so it's lotsofcashoffers.com. Now, when you do this, you're going to go ahead and just tell your system that it's going to go ahead and default to this domain whenever you're working through with this. So for example, just typing in lotsofcashoffers.com will go ahead and direct to this with the HTTP. Now under forward type, you'll go ahead and see that as permanent. You don't want to go ahead and list that as temporary. Again, altering any of these settings, number one, could take about 24 hours to actually reflect the changes. But not only that, you really just want to make sure that you have the correct settings and don't really manipulate anything else, because it could cause some disruption from people viewing your site. So for example, again, forward type is permanent. And for settings, you're actually going to do forward only. We have seen some users who have had this forward with masking and then their domains do not work. So again, just make sure to stick to what we're recommending, and we do recommend forward only. Don't do the forward with masking. This is also covered within the user guide here, which you'll see, as well as just kind of what you need to do next. So for example, if we come back here, the last thing that we need to do is to actually go ahead and save. Once you save, then your changes will be reflected, and I'm going to hit cancel because these changes are already done. Now, what you can do next is actually type in. So for example, just for this, let's say I'll open up a new tab and I'll say www.lotsofcashoffers.com. And we'll go ahead and see that that forwarding is correct and it does work. All right, so glad we can answer that question. Now, as far as it goes, let's dive right back into number one, how we can go ahead and process the information within the user guide. So first, number one, let's say that you were just coming off of our Monday call and you are aware of the user guide, but you aren't really aware of the kind of resources that are within the guide. So for example, if you click onto the user guide, we did this not too long ago, just going over to help and then clicking onto user guide, then you'll see if we go ahead and browse the user guide, number one, you are presented with the complete dashboard for the whole user guide. So for example, you're going to see, if you keep scrolling down to the bottom under this highlighted sections over here, you're going to see how you can go ahead and view all of the documents pertaining to the Investment Dominator. Now, considering that you don't want to have all of your time taken up being able to review all of this, you do want to be able to figure out how you can highlight resources for your immediate needs. So for example, let's say you're working with something in terms of customization. You would actually click on this section over here for customization, and then you would be able to find some article that you want to work with. Also, if you click on data, for example, you'll see articles in relation to data with the Investment Dominator. So this will go ahead and help to hone, again, we're clicking on integrations here. So this will help to hone in on exactly what you're working with and how you can really obtain knowledge in whatever you're trying to do. So for example, if we go ahead here as well to the live training Q&A calls, you'd also see all the previous calls that we've done and following up into the new year. So there's really quite a lot of information that we're working with here. So the next thing that you also want to focus on is how you can use regular keywords that you might use every day. But when you're searching through our user guide, if you're able to use these keywords in an efficient manner, you can really find any resource that you're working with. So for example, with the way that we tag these articles, if you go ahead and type in buying site, you're going to see all the articles in relation to your buying site. So for example, this is a great way to hone in on some of the results that we're working with to be able to go ahead and identify our issues. Also, selling site. Selling site will go ahead and present to us all the selling site theme or anything really in relation to your selling site right here, readily available. Also, you can type in help, and there will be some articles that'll come up right here. Another one that I would like to try as well is why. And now why does come up a lot more in terms of any questions with the Investment Dominator. So just remember to keep that in mind in case if something does happen. But in relation to that, actually, if you go ahead and click up here, there are some additional sections involved with the Investment Dominator. Number one, from the user guide, you could click on support and you'll go ahead and be able to submit a ticket, as you'll see here. And this is actually a really helpful option in case if you ever get locked out of your account and you're trying to still send us a message. If you go ahead and just go to either investmentdominator.com/support, or you come over here to our user guide, and just remember that this is all public information. So you can go ahead and click on that support to be able to submit a ticket. Now the next section here that we're focusing on is known issues. So any known issues with the Investment Dominator, we'll go ahead and note that there. And now we have this next category called What's New. So What's New was actually just added very recently, and I definitely recommend that you go ahead and review this, especially if you've taken a step back from the Investment Dominator and you're just coming back. This is a great way to just catch up on what you've missed and how the Investment Dominator has changed. And I can definitely say for sure that there are going to be a lot of great changes coming to the Investment Dominator real soon. So you really want to pay attention to this What's New section, especially since we're just coming now into the new year. So you'll see here the new updates that are being made to the Investment Dominator, as well as phone validation, which you'll see here too. So the phone validation is relatively new, and we can go over this, and I think I will spend time on this right after we kind of talk through more about the updates to the Investment Dominator. So for example, also the brand new dashboard, the navigation update that we've been talking about with the drop-down menus, that was new as well. And then we have our integrations. So previously, before these feature updates, we did add, I believe it was 2 integrations to the Investment Dominator last year. And those integrations include our outside data service integration, otherwise known as Data Tree, and our REI print mail integration, which we did go ahead and mention earlier, and we're going to dive into in just a bit, just to actually show you live how we can go ahead and prepare and send out a campaign. So, and last but not least, our new Actum automated ACH feature as well. This really goes into owner financing. So if this does apply to you, then definitely recommend checking this out. But with that being said, that'll go ahead and cover just number one, how you can go ahead and use the user guide effectively, as well as how you can view what's new. Actually, before we go into this, one thing I do want to show you guys, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my tab. I do want to show you one more item before we stop talking about the user guide. And if you actually type in system update into the Investment Dominator user guide, what you're going to see here is that system updates and roadmap. This article here, go ahead and click on that. And this is going to inform you. This is also very helpful. It's going to inform you on how you can go ahead and see what's coming to the Investment Dominator. So, you don't, I was thinking about it when I had mentioned that updates were coming. You don't have to really you don't have to question it. You can actually come straight here to the system updates and roadmap. And what you're able to go ahead and see is that all of our planned upcoming system updates, so this involves updating the Investment Dominator and being able to either effectively make it better, or let's say we notice something where if users were having trouble, so now we're bringing that in. So not in any particular order, but the next couple items that we're going to go ahead and work through with is number one, our buying and selling site theme options, as well as our property owner management screens and some system setup wizards. Can't wait for that one. As well as our merge records update, custom envelope update and generator, label generator, updated quick start video course, some public plugins, as well as the theme marketplace. So these are just some of the things that we're working on. But if you scroll down to the bottom here, you're going to see that below is a list of recent updates to the Investment Dominator system. Now, this is a log that is kept for a while now involving the Investment Dominator. And what this goes ahead and tells you is, number one, what update and if there was a fix that was pushed to the Investment Dominator. So for example, if you notice that something has changed, then let's say you're having issues with another part of the Investment Dominator, that's a great point to just bring up during a ticket so that we can readily change that, but also just being able to see kind of what's been done. So you'll see here that if any issues or bug fixes were done, they'll be issued as black, and then if they are new updates to the Investment Dominator, they'll go ahead and be marked as kind of like a teal, a blue-greenish. So you'll see that here, any of the past updates that we have done, especially during the last month of December. For example, we fixed issues with phone numbers used under the company information, not formatting correctly. So you might be confused as to what's kind of going on with that. And that's why I didn't want to talk about this just yet, because I wanted to show you that. But now let's actually go into more along the lines of this phone validation, which we'll see here. So I'm going to click on this. And again, this was under the what's new option. Go ahead and click on phone validation is now required. And what you're going to see is number one, when you are inputting your phone number into the Investment Dominator, you used to have an option before where you can go ahead and provide your extensions. Let's say if we're using Ring Central and you have our recommended 2-line setup. So for the 2-line setup, you do have 2 extensions on one local number. And you're basically going ahead and informing the user within your phone number, let's say something like this. So extension 1. So we'll see here, let's do just a little live example of this here. If we go ahead here to company information, let's see. So we have our phone number here, and let's say that we want to have extension 1 listed up here. So do keep in mind that for the company phone, this actually is the extension 1. But what we're highlighting here for the fact is that if you go ahead and update your site, try that again, you're going to now get an error regarding this. So this is really what this article is all about, and what kind of formatting you need to have in order to actually complete this request. So for example, just for your phone number, you're not going to want to put any additional information there, but you are going to want to actually go ahead and put the actual numbers here. So for example, go ahead and let's say we're working with a number somewhere from New York. Let's say 718, let's say 333333. So we'll go ahead and leave it like that. So you can actually go ahead and leave it just like this, and then you'll come down here and you'll hit update site. And what you'll actually notice is that this will go ahead and update and register. So just keep that in mind so that you don't go ahead and make some of these mistakes. Let's say having something extra on your mailing. This is number one, why we went ahead and added this, what you'll see here, this feedback option. Go ahead and update site, this error. So this is number one, to ensure that when you are sending out your documents that you do not have to worry about any misinformation being sent out, as well as saving money, because when you're sending out a mailing and if there's anything wrong with your company information, just please keep in mind that this information needs to be It needs to be set in stone, really, so that you're not losing any valuable money. So that'll go ahead and cover just how we can go ahead and talk about this. But I would also like to show you another method. So there is another option for those users who do have this tune line set up and they want to go ahead and basically list the information for these extensions that they're working with. There's two options that you can do. The first option is to go to your company notes, which you'll see actually under your company information. So for example, let's scroll down right to the bottom and we'll see under the company time zone here, we'll see company notes. Under company notes, you can leave a little highlighted section. So one thing that I do want to highlight is, let's say if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just when we're talking about our recommended phone setup. For the tune line setup, this is a cheaper option when we're working with Ring Central, which is our partner. And what you'll see here is that the local number 1 breaks down into these two extensions. So again, the extension 1 is really going to be talking about processing our new offer requests, while our extension 2 is going to be mainly just talking about questions about our offer. Now, with this being said, just keep in mind that these are two different entities. So for example, the extension 1 primarily deals with the new offer requests and is usually delegated to Pat Live, but the extension 2 is usually delegated to you, since you're the only person that knows about your offer that you're sending these prospects. Now, just kind of clearing the air about that. So for example, you can say for new offer request, use extension 1. For details about your offer, please use extension 2. So this is a great way to just kind of inform your audience and your user base. Number one, how they can reach you. And it also might just add to clear up the air. So for example, if they're calling and let's say, they call your number that you have listed out, and usually your company phone and your offer phone, if you're going about this method, is exactly the same. The only difference is the extensions. So for example, if they're calling and they don't know which extension that they need to click on, you don't want to potentially lose somebody that, you could have had an offer for. So just being as clear as possible to your user base will go ahead and inform not only them on how they can communicate with you, but also just so that you have a fail-safe plan, really, when users are trying to contact you. But all right, so that's really what we're working with here. And there is something else that I would like to bring up. So for example, let's go ahead and just see. Oh, it looks like you can't write a message that long, but looks like you are limited in terms of characters, which is fine. So the other way that you can add a message so that people can go ahead and see what you're working with or anything that you would want to tell people is this down here. So for example, the letter PS line. Now with the letter PS line, this is basically the same as the company notes, and it would go exactly where the company notes would go. So for example, go ahead and list, please use extension 1 for new offer request. So one thing that I will say is that when you have both of these filled out, you really want to be careful about which one gets printed. So for example, let's go ahead back here to our Investment Dominator. I'm going to duplicate this. Let's reconfirm that. Okay, so let's go to our Homes dashboard section. Let's go to Land. And let's actually test out a random document. So we'll click on this prospect record and we'll click on Generate Documents. When we click on Generate Documents, we're going to go ahead and just first test out this prospect neutral letter. I want the best format for viewing. So again, that's the local printer option followed by clicking onto the PDF. We'll see that there. So now if we scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see here that this message, please use extension 1 for new offer request, actually takes precedence instead of our company notes. So that's always something you really want to go ahead and double check, and just make sure that you are only using one of these. So either use the letter PS line option, or please use the company notes option. You cannot have both. Now, since we're going to go ahead and just use our new company notes one, let's go ahead and delete the letter PS line. Again, we'll just clear this, and we'll scroll down to the bottom and update our site. Now, if we come back to this duplicated tab, and let's say we try to, probably gonna maybe have to refresh before we do this. So let's refresh, and then let's click on another record and try to generate this document again. So we'll come back, local printer, let's try the PDF option, and we'll see this, scroll down, and now you'll see this message down here, which is interesting. Call us anytime. So let's scroll back. Let me see here. It might be just because of the duplicated tab that we're working with. So I'll just go ahead and actually just test this out here. So one more time, let's update the site. And let's make sure that it clears out our PS line, which we'll see here, which is fine. Let's say extension 1, new offer request. And we'll say extension 2, offer details. Let's see if that'll go ahead and remain. Go ahead and update the site. All right, we see that there. It doesn't look like my one came through, so I'll save it one more time. Okay, there we go. Extension 1, new offer request. Extension 2, offer details. All right, now if we come back here and let's go ahead to the land section, go ahead and click on a record again. Click on this, and we'll go to generate documents. Go back to local printer, and we'll click on the PDF option here. Try this one more time. Still not showing it up here, but it really should be popping up here. We can make a note of this, but just keep in mind when you're working through with your system that this will go ahead and pop up down below. Additionally, you do have the option to just actually come back here to the company information and just actually make this your PS line instead. So for example, taking this away from company notes, coming down here to letter PS line, pasting this, try this one more time just to be able to verify. Come back here, land. Again, one more time, let's pick a record and let's go ahead and generate. Same thing as before. All right, and we'll see that there. So just keep that in mind when you're working through with this option. But all right, so that's really the difference when you're working through with that item. And now I would really like to take some of the time that we have to go ahead and number one, be able to review how you can effectively search for records within the land section of the Investment Dominator. Now, this does come as a question a lot, especially because let's say you have tens of thousands of records. And if you are new to the Investment Dominator, you might not think that that really sounds feasible, but I assure you it is. Now, with that being said, you know, being able to track these records could take a mighty long time. So for example, the first thing that I would like to just kind of highlight before we go into using the search feature is actually being able to use tags. So by default within the Investment Dominator, you'll notice that your home section actually does not have this tags column. So in order to change that, we can go ahead here to the view option. And if you click on view, you'll see tags in the third row column here. And right here, tags, we'll go ahead and I'll just click it off for you. So this is normally what you'll see in your Investment Dominator, also not this company one as well. So I'll take that off. Let's see, company, click that one and save. So this is what you'll normally see, and it really can get cumbersome just being able to go ahead and identify exactly what we're working with. And imagine even clicking up to 50 records per page. That can really look like a lot. So let's figure out, number one, how we can isolate our searches and be able to find everything in a more efficient manner. So number one, like we had mentioned earlier, tags. So I want to go ahead and walk through more about the search by feature, so I won't go too into detail about tags, but just being able to kind of show you real quick on how you can work through with this. If you click onto view in the right corner over here, then you can actually add any of these additional custom columns to your land section for your investment dominator. So for example, if you wanted to go ahead and locate your properties, whether that be through by the owner's ID, by the seller agent name, let's say, by address, by zip code, by assessed value, anything of this sort, you do have a ton of options that you can go ahead and filter your results. But the one that we're looking for is tags. So again, the third row column here, tags. Go ahead and save that. And what you're going to see is now this tag column does pop up with all of these associated tags. Now, just for the purpose of this, let's say that we click on this record here and we want to add a tag. If you go ahead here to tag, we have one record selected, which is great, and now we need to enter a new tag. So let's say our new tag is 2022, just like this. Go ahead and type in your tag and make sure that you click it just like I did, so that you'll see the tag pop up in gray with an X right next to it. And once you're done, confirm your tag just like such, and you'll see a response from the system. System is now just telling us that one record has been successfully updated, which is great, the one that we're working with. So now, for instance, when I go to find that record, I cannot find it. So this is why we have tags. If we go over here, and this is a little bit of an introduction into the search by feature, but if we go ahead here and we go to search by and we scroll down, we can actually click on tag. And you'll notice that all of the tags you ever created within your system are on this list. So to find the one that we just created, scroll down all the way to the bottom and you'll see our new tag, which we created, 2022. If we go ahead and search for this tag, we're going to go ahead and see that record that we were working with. So number one, this is a great way to identify your records and be able to isolate your searches. But also just being able to quickly find your records that you're working with, or let's say in a current mailing, let's say ones that you're switching back. So you're taking mailed letter 1 records, switching them back to prospect because you want to do a remail on that county. Tagging is really the way to go. Now with that, before we dive into this search by feature, there is a resource that I would like to give all of you, and that really is, if you go ahead and type in advanced search into the user guide, you're going to see a couple of articles just really based around the fact of how you can execute these advanced searches. Now, for example, if you click and you go through these articles, you'll see the mentioning of tagging, as well as how to tag the records, and also how to do an advanced search. And I'm going to show you a live example, more working along with the advanced search, so that you can actually identify your records in a really efficient way, and one that you might not have known. So whenever I'm done with the search, I usually just click on clear search there, like you just saw. And we're actually going to go ahead and, number one, walk through all of the search by features, and then we'll go ahead and check out this advanced search option as well here too. So there's really a numerous amount of ways that you can go ahead and search for your data. For example, you'll see this property ID range, date created, last updated. You really have quite a lot of options. And you could also search by tag, which we saw earlier, but also status. So status is a good one because if you're working really and focusing on your offer campaign, you do know the steps. So really the steps going from prospect to mailed letter 1, then to pending preliminary research. This is again what we were talking about at the beginning of our call, our deal flow process. So again, this is putting everything into perspective. So especially if you're new, this is definitely some concepts that you really want to try to grasp, just because it really helps in the long haul when you're trying to understand these documents and even creating custom documents. But with that being said, go ahead and let's say if we want to search for a different status, let's search for all the records that I have in my system that are under pending preliminary research. So you'll see here, right there, I was able to identify every single record, so I can go ahead and update my information, be able to update my site, as well as be able to identify these records that we're working with. Now, one thing that I can say is, while we do have a lot of options here that you're working with and you have, what do you do if you have some records that you remember importing, but you actually, or let's say remember updating, but you didn't tag them and you have so many records that you're not able to quickly identify them? So there are a couple of things that you can go ahead and do to actually identify those records. And one of them includes this filter option, which will say either date created or last updated. So if you're working, if you're in the process with some records, let's say, and you're going from your mailed letter 1 to be able to move on to pending preliminary research, you might want to search for last updated in terms of filter options. And let's say if you've imported some new records into the Investment Dominator, then you want to go ahead and search for date created. Now, if I click on date created, this is actually going to provide you with a two-answer window. So what you'll see here is, number one, it's going to ask you a from time. And this will go ahead and present us with the calendar, as we'll see here. So let's say that I wanted to look for some records back on November 29th. And I want to filter those records to be around where, let's say, December 20th. So based on this filter option that we had and we created here, what you're going to see is, number one, we're searching for the time from November to December, and let's go ahead and search. So within that time, we went ahead and created all these records. And also, in case if you didn't want to have all these records just popping up at once, for example, clicking on the 40 records per page, you can actually just click on to select all. Now, I like to do this just to be able to quickly identify all the records that we're working with, so that I know all the records from that time period that we're talking about. Now, with that being said, since we selected all, you also do have another option here to go ahead and tag these records. You'll see here that because I selected all, it goes ahead and saves that in the memory, and it'll go ahead and ask us to tag those 39 records. So let's call this 2239 records delete. So that's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to, again, add my tag that we'll see here and confirm it. So this is a quick and easy way to not only isolate the records that we're working with, but to also be able to quickly identify them. But with that being said, let's say if you make a little mistake and the tag that you created was actually incorrect. So you do have another option here that you can go ahead and work with these records. For example, if you go ahead and click on select all for these records that we just located, instead of adding a tag, what you're actually going to do is click this other option here to remove the tag. Now the tags that we're going to go ahead and remove are just this one that we just created, the 2022 39 records. We'll go ahead and confirm that these tags will be removed, and we'll do like such. So again, this has nothing to do with the impacting the actual record. It's just more along the lines of the identifier that was associated with these records. And it can be either added or removed at any time. So don't think that these are really permanent. These are really temporary holds just on your information, and really helped for consolidating. So the last thing that I want to go ahead and talk through and discuss today is more along the lines of the advanced search feature that we have here. And you'll see the advanced search feature really just works as an extended search by feature. So again, this can get a little bit complicated for those users that aren't too technical, but I do assure you, once you really start just playing around with it and understanding it, it isn't bad at all. So for example, we'll go ahead here and we'll go back to the user guide, and we're just going to see number one, how we can go ahead and learn more. So for example, this article here, how to tag records and execute advanced searches. This will be the first article that we recommend, as well as the second one here, advanced search and saved searches. So these two articles really will go ahead and help and benefit your learning and when you're working through with this. And just keep in mind that, you can't really hurt the investment dominator when you're going ahead and just trying something new. So for example, if you're branching out a little bit out of your comfort zone and you're exploring more technical manners, don't feel like you're ever going to be lost. You can always submit a question or be able to review some user guide information so that you can get to that next step in order to help your business. So with that being said, we'll go ahead back here to the advanced search window. What you're going to see is a couple of options here. And what I recommend is that if it's your first time kind of exploring around with this, you don't really need to touch anything but this right here, and if you need to add any rules. So for example, let's say that we're going to search for status. So let's say we're going to search for status and equals to prospect. So just walking through with this is basically like a code example, or like we'll say like a low code example. So for example, we're searching for status, and we're searching for that status to equal prospect. So just keep that in mind. That's basically like coming up here to the search by feature and just clicking on status and then selecting prospect. That's basically what it means. Now, in order to make this really an advanced search, you can go ahead and add a rule. So you'll see it kind of branch down like this. It's like a tree almost. So you'll see status equal to prospect. And now we're going to look for something else. So let's say that we want to go ahead and look for, let me see, last updated. So this is another one. So we're first searching for the status that equals prospect. Now we're looking for records that were last updated. And let's select the time range for this. Let's say we have about, let me see, let's say from November 30th to about December, went too far, December 15th. So we'll go ahead and actually, let's add one more rule just to see if we'll actually find a record like this. And let's see if we can find something else that we would want to go ahead and highlight. Let's see. So I think we'll go ahead and just leave this as such just for right now. I'll go ahead and delete this. And so we're going to just set this advanced search, and you can set it between this. But some things that I do want to highlight before we do search. Number one, you can change this equal to not equal, as well as you can check dates either between or not between. So there really is a customization factor to this. And once you're done, go ahead and search. And it'll go ahead and load the records. And now we have the records that we're going ahead and working with. Again, we'll click on select all. And now you'll see we have 28 records. So this is great when you've imported, let's say you've imported a lot of records and you just want to quickly identify, the time frame for when you did import those records to just understand how you can find them again. So besides that also is just one more option that I'll go over just kind of briefly because we are almost out of time. But also just going to your activity log under the team and activity log and highlighting over this. If you actually click on where it says updated records, it'll say how many records were updated. Click on that, and that'll go ahead and it should. Well, it'll give you the number here, but if you're going to like an ad and you click on this, then it'll go ahead and bring you directly to those records. But with that being said, it does look like we are just about out of time for our session here today. But with that being said, I would like to end on a quote. And the quote that we have today is from St. Jerome. And the quote goes, "Good, better, best. Never let it rest. Till your good is better and your better is best." So really, when you're working with the Investment Dominator, like we always like to mention, really having these milestones and having these guides to the goals that you're trying to achieve is really going to motivate you and get you to hit the ground running. Don't be afraid to try new things. If you break anything or anything like that, if you think you're going to break something, just know that technical support will be by your side to help you along the way. And we definitely want you to go ahead and explore and try different things, because you never know what could work for your business and really where you can capitalize with your audience. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and end today's session. I really want to thank everybody for joining on today, and really, excited about continuing to use RingCentral webinars. So we'll go ahead and end the call for right now, but we'll go ahead and see you next Monday for our Monday live stream. All right. See you later, everybody, and goodbye.